You're listening to the Jim Boy Star Podcast, episode 94, titled Dragon Warrior for Life, Part 6, guest starring Kenshin 1913. Welcome everyone and happy Halloween! This is Jim, along with Kenshin 1913, aka Pete, and this is it, the finale of Dragon Warrior for Life, the mini-series. This is Part 6. We're finishing up the story. How are you doing, Pete?
I'm doing pretty good, and how about you?
Good, good. A little bittersweet because I am sad that the series is going to be ending, though. It's been very fun reliving probably my favorite Dragon Warrior game of all time. But last time we got all the party members, and now things become a little bit more open world, or not really as clear where you're supposed to go, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what do you typically do at this point after you got Ragnar?
Well, after you get Ragnar, what I usually do is I head over to the little shrine that's north of Keelan, and you pretty much talk to the nun who said, "Oh, now 8 lights coming together. Going to make one big light that's going to destroy the Lord of Darkness." And then at this point, she kind of tries to tell you what his name is, but then she gets killed. So then you're like, oh boy. So some of the stuff that you could do some treasure hunting if you want, because now you have the thief's key and the magic key. So you can go back to some different places and collect some items and stuff. But I'm not going to go too much into like treasure hunting and stuff like that. Like, there's a sea, like, I'll just mention there's, like, a village that you can go to that is like a pirate village, and you can collect this item called the Stone of Drought, which you can use to go into a bonus dungeon or, like, a side quest dungeon where you can get the metal, I think it's the liquid metal sword or something like that, or the metal babble sword, which is one of the best weapons in the game.
Right.
So you can kind of do that, but what I usually do after I'm done with getting Keelan is I usually level up my characters just a little bit, and then I head back to Santim, because I believe that in Keelan they mentioned something about Santim and Balzac.
Yeah, well, the last time we were at Santim, nobody was there.
Right, and now when you go in there, it's actually infested with monsters.
Mm-hmm.
And you can run into a lot of different crazy monsters. So what the group that I like to bring for this battle particularly is I bring Ragnar, I bring Elena, I bring Mara, which I believe Nara, the magic user,
mm-hmm.
and I bring Christo.
Oh, wow, so the hero sits this one out. Okay.
Yeah, because I leave out. See, I try to keep. Maybe I don't bring in one of the sisters, but you have to fight Balzac, and he pretty much says that he found the secret to evolution. He's like this big, stronger guy than he was even before. So you have to fight him. I
don't understand how he thinks he stands a chance that when you beat him with 3 people last time, and now you have 4.
Yeah, the only thing I can think of is he's really like, I got all this power now, because I honestly think he just looks too fat, and he's a fatter version of whatever he was before.
He is. He definitely is.
And, so he thinks he can win, and, you don't really have the Sphere of Silence, so you can't stop him there. But, pretty much after you defeat him, the castle is pretty much emptied of monsters, and you're able to visit the the vault or whatever, the treasure trove of Santim, and you actually get a magma staff, mm-hmm. which will be useful later, and a flute of uncovering, which is an interesting item that we're going to be using, that you also use later. It has a specific purpose.
Right.
So after that, because what I usually do is just kind of travel back to the old areas that we were at mm-hmm. via the ship. So we head back to where Ragnar was from, Berland, and we hear about strange dreams happening in Izmit village.
Right.
So you can head over there, and you hear and you see a dream where it's Sorrow, the guy who was going to be in the arena. he's talking with this girl named Rosa and how he wants to become like this badass like guy, and he wants to destroy all the humans, and she pretty much tells him, please don't.
Mhm.
So when we talk with the king in Berlin, he said they used to have the Zenithian shield, but they gave it to like this castle of all ladies, but you can't get there because the mountain is kind of collapsed over there.
Right.
So you sail over to this area, which is east of Berlin, called Gardenburg, or if I think I recall, it's called like Fem Secria or something like that in the remakes. And there's a mountain there that's kind of all busted. So what you have to do is use, or like blocks the way to the castle. You have to use the magma staff, which is kind of interesting because no, this is the first time you actually have to use the magma staff to blow up something. I was thinking of Dragon Quest III. You had to use a sword to do that. But anyways, you go through there and you go to Gardenburg, which is a very interesting area because all women live there. It's an Amazonian area, kind of like Wonder Woman, where everybody there was a woman and they're like warriors and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And so you pretty much look around. You ask for the shield. They tell you, get out of here. So what ends up happening is you go into this room. There's no one there, or there is someone there who leaves, and you go and you try to leave, and they come over and they say you've stolen I forget what the item is, but you stole something from them, and so they lock you up in jail. And then finally the queen is like, okay, I'll let you try to prove your innocence, but someone's got to stay.
Yeah,
Usually,
I think it was an amulet that.
Yes,
it was the nurse that had an amulet.
Yes, I think it was too. Yeah, it was. And so you pretty much have to get that back from the thief. And usually the character that I leave in is Tulun, because he's probably the least useful at this point.
I was going to say, that's interesting, because I feel like last episode you were singing the praises of Tulun.
Oh, I was, but at this point I would keep him in the jail just because it's kind of funny too, because it's like he was already in prison at one point, or like looking into prison and stuff, so I kind of leave him in there. And then we head to a cave that's just southeast of Gardenburg. And
was there any way that we know that we're supposed to go to this cave?
I think someone mentions that there is a cave to the southeast where like shady people sometimes visit.
Okay.
So I think that's where you kind of get the idea of doing that. Honestly, I guess you could leave whoever you want in there. You can change up whoever you want to leave in there, but I guess if you leave whoever, you can go along your merry way. You don't have to do this, but you want to get the Zenithian gear, because once you get the Zenithian gear, actually the path, that was one thing that they mentioned too. Once you get that gear, it pretty much you'll be able to go to the Zenithian castle, which I forget why they said you had to go there.
Oh, I was going to say, I didn't know that it was skippable, but eventually you're going to need to do this.
Yes, you have to do this, because there's a point in the game, if you don't have all the Zenithian gear equipped, you can't reach the castle.
Right, okay.
You could do everything to reach the castle, but you just can't get there. I'll tell you when we get to that part. So we go through the cave, and we find the thief at the end of the cave. We pretty much beat him up. His name is, I think his name is Banker.
Yeah, I have Baker.
Or Baker.
I have a question, though, because, so apparently Baker is asleep when you go in there.
Mm-hmm.
And then you talk to Baker, and I don't know, Baker says stuff, and then it kind of goes like, oh, you're never going to catch me, or something to that effect, and he runs around the room.
Mm-hmm.
Can he successfully escape? And if so, what happens? Does anything
if he does escape, like if you let him leave, all you have to do is walk up the stairs and back down the stairs, and I believe he will be there again, which is kind of funny.
It is. It's pretty funny.
Yeah, and so what you have to do is talk to him. He wakes up. You pretty much get in the way. There's only really one way to get out of that place, so if you get in the way, he can't get out. But if you're just farting around, you could do that. So you defeat Baker. They bring you. Some lady followed you. She takes him back. You go back. Pretty much everything is peachy. She not only gives you the jailer's key, the queen. She's like, "Thank you for finding the real thief." She gives you the jailer's key, which is the best key. You know, it can open up all the locked doors and everything, all the barred doors. And she gives you the Zenithian shield, and she lets your friend out. And now you can go get the fire claw for Elena, which is her best weapon, which is really, really good.
Yeah,
so you get a lot of good stuff here.
It's interesting that you get a thieves key. Like what? Okay, yeah, I get it. You're innocent. Thank you for catching the thief. Now here, if you want to, help other thieves escape, here you go. Like I don't understand. Like that's the queen is like, yeah, you could have this. Mm-hmm. Like the Zenithian stuff definitely makes sense, and although the more I'm thinking about it. Because the thing is, the Zenithian gear, that has to be worn by the hero, right? No one else can equip that.
Yep.
So, and it was owned by Berlin, whatever, the Ragnar castle. Is it
Berland, yeah.
Berland. So, when Ragnar made it very clear that at the end of Chapter 1, that he was going to go in search of the hero, why wasn't he told then, oh, by the way, we used to have the hero's armor. If you should find him, here's where the armor's going to be.
Yeah, that's a good question, actually. You know, I wonder if they weren't going to tell him, or they didn't tell him just due to the fact that he didn't find the hero yet.
Maybe,
you know what I mean?
That's like the only thing that I can buy.
And then it, like, if he did find the hero, he'd be like, okay, now you got to go get it. Because if they kind of told him where the shield was, it's like kind of giving them the cart before you have the horse, you know what I mean?
I guess, yeah, I can see that. Now, before we go to the next town, because I don't know, I have a lot of notes here about a town, and I'm not sure if maybe it's unnecessary, and maybe that's why we might have skipped over it. There's a water town in this world.
Yeah, we will get to that.
That's in your notes. Okay, great. I just wanted to make sure. I didn't know if it was not necessary, and I took notes wrong. Okay.
No. So at this point, when you have the jailer's key, you can actually. This is where you can go get a lot. You pretty much go all around the world wherever you've been already, and you can pretty much grab all the treasure. So like there was treasure in Tulun's hometown. There was treasure in every castle that you've been to. You know, you go back and you're collecting all this treasure on all these mini medals and stuff like that. So. Near what's the name of the town? Near Gardenburg, where we were just at. If you keep sailing east, you'll eventually come to this cave that's in the water, and you'll come to a little island that has a shrine there, or like a castle. Mm-hmm. If you go there, that is where you can drop off your mini medals. Now, in this game, this is the first time they ever did mini medals, so they did it a little differently than how they do it now. Like every other version,
yeah.
Pretty much, you give him mini medals, and he'll get you. He'll keep track of how many you have, and you can actually get rewards for the mini medals, which is sort of similar, but not in the essence of. If you can get multiple items of the mini medals if you want. Like the best thing is like I think it's the Metal King shield or something like that, and but you can get, like, Sword of Miracles. There's, like, a bunch of really good stuff. But you can get more than one of them because, like, they cost, like, 4 or something. And so if you have 8, you can get 2 of the 4. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And in the newer versions, they pretty much, you collect them, you give them to them, and once you hit a certain point, they give you a certain item. So right. It's a little different in this game. It could be abused a little bit, but you only get so many mini medals, so... I believe you get enough to get each one, but if you didn't want to get one of them, you can, do double of one item or whatnot.
Do you have a suggestion for people that they should put aside to you, like how many mini medals that they should make is the goal? Like that makes it worth it. Do you think they should absolutely look for every single mini medal in the world?
If you can, if you can't, that's all right too. Pretty much, I would say try to get, like, I believe there's a Sword of Miracles in that, or the Miracle Sword. I would really look into getting that, because what that item does is when you attack someone, it pretty much gives you 25% of whatever you attacked with. It'll give you back as HP, which is really, really cool.
Okay.
So, like, if you attack for 100, you get 25 HP back, which is really, really good. But yeah, if you don't find them all, that's all right because it's harder to get them in the NES version because they're hidden places, and in the new versions they actually have them shine. So you can use that to get them, and plus you can use an ability that Taloon has to, I think it's called Nose for Treasure, and he'll pretty much, if you go into dungeons or any of the towns, he'll pretty much tell you, here's how many treasures are left in the town.
Right. Okay.
So it's a lot easier to get them in the remake versions. So after that, what you can do is there's a lot of stuff. You don't have to do it in any particular order. We can go over to this one town. It's called Rosaville, and you're like, what? That's a weird name for a town. And you pretty much it's actually a town inhabited by dwarves, humans, and monsters, which is pretty interesting. And there's this large tower that we saw in the dream. And if we use the flute of uncovering, we can actually go into the secret passageway that Sarah went through. And you can go up the tower and you meet Rosa. And you have to fight Sorrow Knight, which is one of her bodyguards or whatever. And you pretty much talk to her and she tells her that you have to stop Sorrow. And there's a staff of transformation that you need in the Royal Crypt that's near Endor. Mm-hmm. So that's just kind of like information that is useful for now. And I'm just kind of telling you this because there's going to be a point later that you're going to that information is important. Even just Rosa, meeting her before anything happens is an important thing.
Right. Now, I do think that you're missing probably one of the most ridiculous or sad things, depending how you look at it, in Roseville. And that is this poor old man that runs 3 shops by himself, and I believe the inn.
Yeah.
Clearly,
that guy...
this man has no savings. He's never going to retire, and he's going to literally die in work.
Yeah, that guy is he's working pretty hard, and he runs 3 towns and I think the church, I want to say.
Oh yeah, maybe not the inn. Yeah, it was the church. So yeah, and that one he doesn't even gain any monetary, no monetary exchange is given.
Yeah, he's very busy. He's a really, really busy dude, and I'm actually surprised. I'm actually surprised he doesn't have any help, but. And maybe he's collecting all that dough, and he's like, I'm going to close up this shop one day, and then that day just hasn't come yet.
He clearly has no one that he's leaving it to.
Yeah.
I think he's even too old for that to even be a possibility at this point.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know how well he does. I mean, I guess he has to do really well, since he's the owner of the only shops in the area. Mm-hmm. But then again, how's the battle around Roseville? Is it tough enemies?
Yeah, you start as you go the areas do get tougher, but it's actually a pretty good area because you can collect a lot of gold around that area, if I recall.
Maybe that's a strategy. He's having people collect gold and I'm going to sell you some stuff. Yeah, but this guy, I kind of wanted him to be mentioned again. Even though I know that it's not, I want him to be mentioned again by the end of the game on how his condition is.
Right. And the interesting thing about... Oh, go ahead.
Because, wait a minute, because when he dies, then that means they no longer have any armor or weapons. The monsters are eventually going to invade, unless they all flee to this tower that's now... But I guess they can't because you have the Flute of Uncovering, and you're not leaving it there. So this town's just fucked.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing I was just thinking about. One of the things, a lot of the monsters and all the people are saying, you should try to leave Rosa alone. But the main thing about this town is that they talk about how, if you can collect an elf's or a fairy's tears or something.
They're ruby teardrops. That's right. Okay.
Yeah, they're made out of rubies, but once they touch you or whatever, they shatter and everything. So a lot of people come to that town to try and collect those things, and I think he probably gets pretty good business from that. If I had to think about that,
but they disappear.
Yeah, but
so they
still
can't
people.
Use it.
people still trying to come and get the stuff. That probably a lot of people come by, and he's like, "Oh, maybe you need some items. Maybe you need some armor, something like that.
Maybe you need to save your progress."
Yeah, maybe you need to confess something to me. I don't know.
I would like to think that some of these people would be smart enough that, like, if there was a monster invasion, they would, like, get smart enough and just build, like, use themselves as a human ladder. And because clearly the tower's the way to go to survive if there is a monster invasion. Because there's no entrance without that flute of uncovering.
Yeah.
Which makes me wonder, then, are there only two in the entire world? Yours and Sorrow's?
I don't know. I think so. I don't know why that the other monsters would have one. I figure Sorrow would be the only guy who has it.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Wow, we spent a lot of time on Roseville. All right, so let's continue.
But that's all right. So another thing we can do is there is a castle where it is it's an island area, which is, I believe, northwest of Santeem, where it's pretty much like Venice, where it's you get all this water, all these different waterways, and you travel through the town in your boat, which is pretty cool, and it's actually very interesting day and night kind of thing. But the main thing, I believe, it's called Stanka or Stanka. Okay. I always think of the coffee.
I like Stanka. Like, that feels like it should be some, like, ghetto brand name for something. Like, check out some Stanka. Like something that maybe a 50 Cent would come out with. Like, it's his body odor. Like, I mean, hey, he already has an alcoholic beverage. Well, what is it? It's a vodka that 50 Cent has, I believe.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it's called Effin', so it's Effin' vodka. That's his vodka. But so, this town is so weird. Wait, let me just continue about this town. This town is so weird because, like, you say it's like Venice, but if you don't have a boat, you can still get around Venice. You have no boat, you're kind of stranded. There's a guard like, right next to the castle. It's on the left side. And he's like, "Oh, I'm supposed to be keeping the monsters out." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, that's great. God forbid they should come by sea."
Yeah, they'd be screwed. That guy would be screwed.
And he can't leave. Like, he has to wait for somebody with a boat to come by.
Yeah, I guess he'd have to swim across or something.
He's stranded to keep monsters out.
Yeah. Well, if he's doing his job and he's got, like, guard duty from the edges, maybe he's keeping the monsters out just by, like, being there. You know what I mean? And
then there was another woman in this town that I don't know if they were, and I'm wondering if this had the wording on this had changed in later versions. I feel like it probably did, but maybe, like, we're the only ones that would have noticed this. Where a woman, like, kind of insinuates that her husband is going to beat her if there's no food on the table. Do you remember this at all?
I kind of remember that a little bit. Yeah, I kind of remember it a little bit.
Like, there's no way that would fly in this year. Like, I feel like it would have had to be changed. And I'm curious if and I feel like it's so minor that as many times as you've played different versions of this game, I guess you can't remember if that's been changed at all, do you?
I don't remember, but I'm sure they probably, like, obviously, if it was Nintendo and they're licensing it for Nintendo, they would probably change it. They would probably change it a little bit, yeah.
Right. Yeah, and apparently there's, like, one boat per visitor? Because I only see one boat in this entire town other than yours.
Yeah, it's weird, and one of them I think is a merchant, where he's like on a boat and you can talk to him, and he's a merchant guy. So it is kind of odd. I'm surprised that someone hasn't tried to make a service where it's like, oh, here's you got to pay 50 gold or whatever, and you can borrow the ship and travel all through town or whatnot.
Yeah, like a rental car. Only
exactly, they can make a ton of money, they could use that to collect that one guard. You know what I mean? He can pay to get picked up.
You would also think at this point they might have invented bridges.
Yeah.
Considering, but then again, maybe the king's like, oh no, no bridges are permitted, and that's how he keeps his thumb on this town, so to speak, because they can't unite because they can't even get to one place or the other.
Right.
All right, let's talk about this king. Go ahead. What's he up to?
So the king, pretty much, he's like, I have a contest. I'll give the Zenithian helmet to anyone who can make me laugh. And so you can go up there. You can try and, with Talon, because he's arguably the funniest character you got. But he can't make him laugh. No one in your group can make him laugh. But if you remember correctly, there was a character at Mon Barbara that was a stand-up comedian or whatever. And his name was Pannon.
Yes.
And I found out what his name was right after the podcast was over last time. I was like, oh, his name was Tom Foolery. That's
horrible.
what his name was.
Horrible.
Yeah. So you go over there, you talk to Pannon or Tom or whatever you want to call him, and he pretty much is like, oh, okay, I'll join your group. And he is arguably the character in the game that I use the least, and it's not because he's bad. I actually end up using him like a little bit, like just off screen when I was playing, and he's a decent character. But literally, you have the return spell or the zoom spell or whatever, and you take him from the theater right back to the castle. So you hardly ever see this guy in battle, ever.
Well, you said you did see him in battle. What does a Pannon in battle look like?
So Pannon in battle, he pretty much has a sword of sleep or whatever, and he uses that sword. And he also has the sleep spell, and he has a couple other things. But he's not like a typical goof-off kind of guy. He'll actually like fight rather than like look at his finger twirl or just like whatever goof-offs do. He's actually not a bad character. But you only have him for like 5 minutes maybe.
Right, yeah.
You warp back to the king. You have Pannon in the front, and he pretty much tells the king, like, I'm not going to be able to make you laugh. Pretty much, you should give these guys the helmet because they're the heroes that this world needs. And once they defeat the bad guys, pretty much you'll be able to laugh all you want, and you'll live in a world without fear or whatever. So the king thinks about it, and he's like, you know what? Yeah, you're kind of right. All right, here's the key, or here's the helmet. So he gives you the helmet, and after that, you can explore and get all the any treasures that you might have not gotten with the final key. And what else? So you pretty much leave, and then as soon as you leave the town, Pannon's like, well, I'm done. Good luck on everything, and he leaves.
Yeah, I don't know how he got back.
I have no idea how he gets back to anything ever. I don't think we ever meet this guy ever again.
Well, wait. If you go back to the theater, is he there or no?
Nope. Actually, they went back to dancing. They went back to dancers.
Well, that's what they know. That was like, oh, that was our bread and butter before.
Yeah. So they went back to dancers. And one thing I forgot to mention is if you go back to the town next to Santiam, where Elena was from. If you go back this is how you know you have to start collecting the Zenithian gear, is if you go back into that town and you use the magic key and whatnot, you'll see a signpost of Elena's dad. He wrote it when he was a kid because if you remember, he has like weird powers where he can like see stuff in his dreams or something like that. And he pretty much wrote like, oh, the ruler of evil is coming, and you need to collect the Zenithian armor, the Zenithian gear, in order to get over there and meet the Zenithian god or whatever he is.
Right.
So that's pretty much how. Because I was like trying to think, why did we start doing this? But that's actually the reason why.
And also, I guess the king had a magic key that he never gave his daughter.
Yeah, he wrote something in the back where, it's if you went outside of town and came back in, you'd be able to just look at it without having to use the keys. If you just walked around.
Yeah.
I always found that kind of funny. That
this is also the home of Marone the poet, who I think is a horrible poet, by the way.
Yes, and he was the one who with the bird song Nectar thing.
Yes, so this is not Marone's first appearance in this series.
Yeah.
Now have, and I don't, because that was the water place was one of the main places I wanted to touch upon, but then I have like weird notes because you mentioned you can go wherever. So like for example, I have And let me know if you plan to go to this town, because it's only one note. So if you don't plan to go here, then let me know and I'll just say what I have. Conenburg.
Yeah, I think I'm going to be taught Conenburg. What happens there?
Well, not much. That's why I'm wondering if you were just going to skip over it, because the only thing I had a question there was, there in one of the rooms, there's a flame, like in a jail cell, it looks like.
Oh, right. Yes.
And I want to know why this flame is so against us.
Right. So if you go back there now that you have the final key, I believe it's called, you could talk to this guy, or this, like, he was there before when we were collecting our party members. He was there, but you couldn't reach him. But now once you talk to him, he's pretty much like an evil spirit that's there, and he's like, you guys aren't going to get anywhere, all hail the Lord of Darkness. I want to say that you fight him.
Wait a minute, time out. Correctly. Are you saying that earlier in the game, this flame was in human form?
No.
Okay.
No. He's just some, like, dead monster or something that's up there. I don't... This part is kind of hazy, because after you do something, you can pick up the Sword of Decimation, which is like this cursed weapon that you get.
Right.
I forget about... That part's kind of hazy, so if you want to continue with it. I just think that it was like a flame up there, and he was there because the monsters were there or something. I forget.
So that's what you think. You think he was a monster that died in the cell and came back as a flame, and that's why he hates us.
Yeah, it's kind of like with Dragon Quest II, where they when they died, they were just the people in Moonbrook. They just became like flames and wandering spirit kind of things.
Right, but that's where I'm a little confused, because yes, that's a wandering spirit as a human, because they were all like sympathetic and like, oh, woe is me, and I didn't realize, I guess, that a monster can just turn into a flame.
Yeah, because there's also, now that I'm thinking about it, in Santeem, there's a monster that's guarding the treasure place, and it's actually a monster, and it pretty much tells you can't go any further. I don't think you can fight that one, but you have to wait until you defeat Balzac in order for, all the monsters to disappear.
I guess that makes sense. All right. And also, now that I'm thinking about it, I feel like there was a flame in Chapter 4 in Actempo when everyone was sick. Like, I think it was in the upper left part of the town. I could be wrong there. I don't really remember.
I want to say that was just a flame. Sometimes you can go over there and talk to them. Sometimes you can go over and talk to them, and sometimes they'll actually be spirits. I get that confused a bit, too. I always end up going over there just because, from Dragon Quest II, I'm like, okay, so these guys are like lost souls, so I'm just going to go see what's the harm talking to souls or whatever.
Yeah, this series has that confusing and skeletons. Sometimes they're alive, and sometimes they're just corpses.
Right, like we'll definitely run into something like that pretty soon.
Yeah. All right, what do we got next?
So, after we collect the shield and the helmet, we can actually go and get. I mean, you could do this again. You can do whatever you want whenever you want. After you get the 8 party members. But I'm just kind of going through how I do it. So after that, you go to the Shrine of Breaking Waves. It's near the Mini Metal Castle, which is north of Rosaville, or like east of Gardenburg. And you go through this cave. You go on your boat, so it's pretty cool that you get to bring everybody with you. It's one of the only dungeons that I can remember that has entering, with your boat, and you can use all 8 of your party members. So It's kind of confusing and tricky, but in this cave, we find the Zenithian armor. And this was actually, if you remember, I forget what the name of the town was, but they had the armor. Well, the guy said that the armor was stolen, but they said that they had it hanging up in their town, but that wasn't true. So
this is the one that gave the 6-star tour that we both agreed upon. Not the 6-star, the 6 out of 10 tour. Okay.
Yeah, so we grabbed that, and now we pretty much have We pretty much have all of the Zenithian gear except the sword, which we won't get for quite some time. So now after that, we take a clue from Rosa, who told us about this royal crypt, and there's a staff of transformation there. Granted, we don't really know why we need to get this staff. It's just something on the checklist of things we should probably do.
Right.
So we head down to the royal crypt, which is south of Endor, and this is one of the best places in the game to level up. In this area, you can fight metal babbles, but the nice thing about it is they come in many groups of metal babbles, and with each metal babble you kill, you get 10,000 experience points, which is really, really good. And if you do it on the very first floor, because you can run into them, you'll actually get experience for all 8 of your party members, rather than just the 4 when you go inside the crypt.
Oh, I didn't even know that. Okay.
Yeah, so it's pretty amazing. And you head down there, and it's kind of tricky because they have those floors with the arrows like they did in when we had to get the seed for Christo. Mm-hmm. So it can be a little confusing on where you have to go. But once you get the Staff of Transformation, it's just like it was in Dragon Quest III, where you can use it and you can transform into all different types of people, monsters, dwarves, elves, all this stuff.
Right.
So what we do after that, it's kind of hard because you don't really get a lot of direction, which is a good thing and is sort of a bad thing. But you're pretty much gonna just explore the rest of the world, where there's this island to the south. Because in the center of the world, there's this area you can't reach to by boat. So if you go south of that, there's a town called Riverton, which I want to say is the same name even in the DS and remake versions, which is nice.
Right. Yeah.
And it's another one of them towns where you sail on a ship through the town and you get to explore both sides of the river, which is kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much you learn about the Shrine of Colossus, which is to the south, and you have to go on that for some reason. Again, I don't know why they say you have to go to these places. I'm not 100% sure.
Right.
But you're just exploring, trying to collect everything you can. So you hear about this. And one cool thing about Riverton is it's like the only town that's on the river. And like it's just kind of neat how they have different things on both sides of the river and stuff. And I want to say there's even like an underground passage that brings you from one side to the other. Mm-hmm. You know, so I guess it's handy for people if you want to talk about how people live there. So it's kind of cool.
Yeah. This seems more organized than the other waterway castle that we had dealt with earlier.
Yeah, Branka. It definitely is a little more organized. So we head to the Shrine of the Colossus, which is an interesting place. It's actually probably the best place if you're playing the game and you're using Christo, where the AI is actually smart as hell, because he's always casting defeat or beat or whatever, and most of the enemies in that area are very susceptible to those spells. Wow. So I always found it really useful to have him in the group at that point, because I was like, holy crap, he's killing all these guys, when in other instances he'd be casting the spell and nothing would happen. You'd be like, stop using that damn spell, you know?
I remember as a kid, I never liked this statue/cave thing. I don't know what it was. I don't know if because obviously I didn't know the Christo thing. Otherwise, things would have been a lot easier for me. Probably at that point, I wrote Christo off. Was like, I'm just going to do the same shit that you did earlier. Mm-hmm. Not knowing that it would actually work this time. But I was never a fan of this part of the game. I'm not sure why.
I remember not being a fan of it as well, and the reason would be because there was a couple of monsters in that area, or in this dungeon, that would actually cast beat and defeat, and would like instantly kill you. And it's like, oh no, God, I need to make sure I have revive. At this point, you should hopefully have some revive spells. Yeah. And to bring people back, because they could be very nasty. And
if not, just grind in that cave with the metal babbles.
Yeah. I think level 25-ish, you probably learn like Vivify or Zing or Kazing or whatever it's called now. And so with this area, you pretty much go up the Colossus over the hands and this stuff, and you pretty much make it move from the north side of the river to the south side, and then once you get off there, you head in. You find this palace, which is the Palace of the Monsters. Now, this is a pretty interesting. This is a pretty interesting area because you need the Staff of Transformation for this part,
Right.
and you have to turn into a monster, whether it be a Drakey or whatever. I mean, little mini demon, whatever monster you turn into. So there, you actually meet, like we were talking about before. You meet a couple of skeletons who are actually just skeletons, and then a couple of them who are actually monsters that are sleeping or whatever, which is kind of funny. and through here, you kind of like go upstairs, and Sorrow is pretty much the leader of these monsters at this point, and he's having a meeting. So if you go up to the meeting and you're still a monster, Sorrow will come by and he'll be like, "Oh, over at Tempmo, that we've actually found the Palace of the Underworld. So we have to go there and awaken the big bad guys. I believe his name is Istark."
Yes.
Yeah.
And I can't believe once again Actempo is a victim here.
Yes.
Although I have to be honest, because I started thinking about this the other day, so we know that they were in dire straits in chapter 4. We saw how sad it was and the gas and everything. Why did they keep digging thinking that was the answer to their problems?
I honestly think some of the people were probably doing it for greed. Like there were a couple guys that were down the bottom that were like, "Oh, we're gonna find gold. We're gonna get gold."
All right.
But the other people on the top were like, "We gotta get the hell out of here."
Right. Yeah. Well, and you remember the priest that wouldn't save your game.
Yes.
And so speaking of priests, in Dire Palace, there's one that's locked up, and he is not much of a priest. He tells people, he says for the monsters to take the other two and not him. Not a very priestly thing to do there.
Yeah, because they're gonna try and eat all these people, and it's just monsters being monsters,
Right.
So and even if you do let them out, they never escape, which is kind of odd. If you could sneak past them being monster through the staff transformation, unlock them and be like, "Yo, we're humans. Get the heck out of here." They never leave, which is weird.
Maybe they're too scared. I would be. I mean, it doesn't look like they would have to. They wouldn't. It's not like they wouldn't be escaping without a fight.
Right.
They would definitely run into a monster on the way out. At least one. All right, so we're back at Actempo. We go.
Yep.
We continue down the path, and what do we find?
Well, when we get there, we find that pretty much there's been a giant gas leak, and most of the people that were living there before are dead. So even the small amount of people that were there before, most of them are dead. There's maybe one or two people that are like, "We're getting the hell out of here." There's a giant gas explosion, and pretty much everything's screwed. So we go the passageway until we reach where we got the gunpowder, and there's two dead guys, and they're like, and one of them's like, "Oh, we should have been able to get gold. Oh no!" So you go through where they eventually broke through, and you finally find the castle of the underworld, or Istark's underground lair, and pretty much what happens is you go through this place and you fight monsters and whatnot. You finally get to Istark, and the interesting thing about him is he's asleep.
Yeah, and you certainly weren't afraid of him.
No,
because
no.
as I wrote down here that I still I said sometimes I go look at some of your older footage here when you did this as a Let's Play, and you wrote or you said he doesn't even look so tough. He doesn't even have his own sprite.
Yeah, they didn't even give him his own sprite. I think he was just like a big purple blob or something.
I just
at least in the remakes they changed that, and they made him look menacing. He was bigger than anything, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. I just like that was your basis on why you're not afraid of him.
Yeah, yeah. So we take him on, and he's asleep. But don't think that that's the reason why he's easy. He actually is very, very tough, and I believe he can attack twice, and he can use like all kinds of different attacks. But eventually, the heroes kill him, and you're probably thinking, hell yeah, we
It's done.
did a great job. But then Sorrow comes over, and him and his buddies, and they're like, holy shit, he's been defeated. And then another monster comes by and says Rosa has been abducted by humans, and Sorrow's really pissed off. So they leave, and now you're kind of like, okay, what do we got to do? Before you leave, there was an item that they wouldn't let you get because Eastark's his like power or whatever was making it so these monsters were alive, so you couldn't get by. And once you go by, you get this item called the gas canister, which is something that you can use. And there was a guy in Riverton. This is something I forgot to mention, but there was a guy in Riverton that pretty much said, I can make you something that'll allow you to go anywhere you want without the water. So after we get this gas canister, he kind of needs it. So we go back to him, and he gives us a balloon, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely.
Not the most convenient, flying vehicle, because honestly, I always thought it was kind of weird. Like, how the hell did they get all 8 party members,
and
right?
a wagon,
plus the wagon, plus the horse in this tiny little balloon?
Yeah,
it'd make more sense if it was like a Zeppelin kind of thing.
Oh, sure, yeah, that one of those huge like blimp-looking things too.
Yeah, because that, at least then it's believable that you were able to fit all this stuff on there. But maybe it's more like a TARDIS, I don't know.
Definitely.
And there's all this room in the middle. But so from there we can finally explore. There's a few areas that we weren't able to explore before because we couldn't get there by ship. And there's this place. Well, first thing you want to do, honestly, is you hear about Rosa. Rosa was cool to you, so you want to find out what the hell went wrong. So the only way that you can figure it out is if you go to Elfville. And they pretty much say some humans came and they took her, or not Elfville, I mean Rosaville. And pretty much you find out that some humans took Rosa, and Sorrow came and he was ticked off. So the only way that you're going to be able to find out what happened was if you go back to sleep at Ismet Village. And when you do, you find out that these humans took her. They're beating her up, making her cry and stuff, but it doesn't work. And then they just pretty much kill her. And then Sorrow comes in, and he pretty much kills them. And then Rosa tells him not to hate the humans and that, don't worry about me and this, that, and the other. And so she dies. Sorrow is pissed off, which I totally get. Totally get. Like to this point, I feel like Sorrow's kind of like, he's kind of like dancing the line of being bad, you know what I mean? He's talking about how he wants to kill the humans, but like, maybe he doesn't want to. I mean, he's got this girl that he likes, and, if everything's going right with her, maybe he doesn't really want to do anything. So at this point, he's like, his girl's dead, and he's ticked off, and he's like, I'm going to kill all the humans. This place is bull. So, and then it's kind of like this ominous, like, ending to the dream.
Mm.
And I'm just bringing this up because the dream's kind of important for later. So what we end up doing with our balloon is now we can head off to this big tree in the middle of the I think it's near wherever that poor castle was. I sadly I can't remember all the names.
I think it's there's so many towns and castles and all that in this game. Once this really starts opening up to this effect, like now you can go wherever you want with the balloon. It's definitely understandable if we miss a name here or there. Yeah, so we go to this place in the middle of the desert that's surrounded by mountains, and there's this giant tree in the middle. And if you go there, the town, I guess, if you would call it, underneath is called Elfville, but the big tree is called the World Tree, or as they call it in every other game afterwards, Yggdrasil. Right.
And they're pretty much talking, you can buy some really good gear here, and they're pretty much talking about how they're hearing a voice up in the tree screaming for help, and that you would need to come with 3 party members. So at this point, usually I take the hero, Ragnar, and Christo, and I usually go up the tree, which it can be difficult because if you walk a certain way or if you accidentally come off, you'll fall down and you'll have to do it all over again.
That sucks. Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, it does stink. So you have to be very careful on the branches. But the nice thing about it is you can pick up a World of the Leaf Tree if you just search the leaves, and you can only pick up one, but it's still pretty cool.
Right. Yeah, you know that even if you wind up using one for whatever reason, you can always come back here, and I think it just respawns each time. As you can only have one. I like that. The signal for help is very specific. You could only bring 3 party members.
Yeah, because the very first time I went I didn't talk to that one character, and I went up and I met this character that's up there. She's up there. She's pretty much injured and she needs your help getting back down. So I went up there and I'm like, oh, hey, we'll help you. And she's like, oh, no, I can't because your party's full. I was like, what? Oh man! And so I had to fall down and go all the way back up.
I can just imagine. Oh, my place is on fire. Help! 911. Oh, but you can only bring 2 fire trucks.
Yeah, the street's all full of your fire trucks. I need you to take one away. It's like, oh no!
Then they come rolling with 4. I'm like, no, I told you to only take 2. Now you have to go back. You have to leave 2 of your fire trucks and come back with only 2. By the way, this house is still burning.
Yeah. So you go up with 3 characters. You talk to this girl who's a Zenithian, which is pretty interesting because you've never met one before. And she's got like little wings. She's like wearing this hat with little wings on it and stuff. And her name is Lucia. And she pretty much joins your group. One of her wings. Oh yeah, that's right. They have wings, I believe. They actually like have wings on their back, which I don't think they really showcase in the NES version, but in the subsequent,
no, you're right.
I think in the remakes they actually show that they have wings and they're sort of angelic.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so she pretty much hurt her wing and she needs your help to bring her back to the castle. And at this point she says that the Zenithian sword is actually located in the tree. So you go around it's pretty much on the same level. You go around and you get the Zenithian sword, which in the remake versions is kind of like dull and like rusty. But in the original version, it's just the Zenithian sword. Now you have all of the Zenithian gear, which is pretty awesome. So Lucia kind of tells you now that you have all the Zenithian stuff, the way to reach the castle is you have to go to the center of the world, which could only be accessed by flying or whatnot. So after you're done with the tree, you head over to the center of the world. You land in this little island, and then it turns into a really big island, which is kind of interesting. And you go to the last town of the game called Gottside. Now, this place is interesting
because it's isolated from the rest of the world.
Yes, it is, and it's got a lot of bridges, unlike the other town, and it's pretty cool. This is interesting. This is one spot you have to remember if you're playing the remakes, because something will happen in the bonus footage or the bonus content that you have to know about. But so you talk to these guys, you can buy a lot of good gear, and you explore this little island. And there you're going to find a couple of really good items in the Baron's Horn, which is really, really important. Because what it does is if you're ever in a place where you can't use your wagon, you can blow the horn and the wagon will be there, which is really cool.
Definitely. By the way, I forgot to mention, so when I was a kid, I 100% I did not trust Lucia when I first saw her in the tree. I was like, something's up with you. I don't know if I necessarily trust you. It wasn't until probably around this time that I was like, all right, I guess she's for real.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I didn't like her that much because I just felt like, I was like, at this point, I already have I didn't like her not because of like her personality or whatever, but I just didn't like her because it's like, I could be using someone else that I've been, using throughout the whole game, and I know how they're going to work, and this is a new person, and it's like she's not that good other than healing. Like, she's a pretty good healer.
Well, I was just going to ask you, so we didn't really talk about her, but what was she like in battle? She's just a healer?
She actually has some pretty decent attack spells, and she has, I believe, Kasap and stuff, so she's not too bad, but she's not like someone I would want to keep in, because she ends up just being like, every other like side character after chapter 4, where they're kind of there, but you have characters that are going to be that overshadow them. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So if you need a really good attack spell person or like a really good mage, use Bray or use Mara.
Right.
If you need a healer, you usually use Christo or the actual hero. So it's kind of like she's kind of overshadowed by the main cast.
Sure. Okay.
So after that, we get the Baron's Horn, which is probably the most important part about that, and the Dress of Radiance, which is a really good armor. But so we find the Zenithian Tower, which is pretty iconic. It'll be a very iconic area even in the next 3 games. So you travel up this Zenithian Tower. And at the very top, there's a spot where if you do not have all the Zenithian equipment equipped, because at this point the Zenithian sword isn't really the best sword for the hero if you have other swords, And so like let's say you don't have that sword equipped, but you have all of his armor equipped, you'll get to this one point and they'll be like, "Oh, you must have all the Zenithian equipment equipped in order to reach this section." So you have to equip it, and then eventually it sends you to this town or this castle in the sky called Zenithia.
Right.
And here you learn a lot. You learn a whole lot. A couple of things that I'll just kind of like bullet point some things.
Yeah.
So you learn that there's been a big war between the leader of this castle. His name is Master Dragon, and the evil guys and the evil guys underneath the earth, like Istark and the Dragon Master. They've been pretty much having a battle for a long time, and finally Master Dragon was able to seal him inside there with the hopes of him never waking up or whatever. But that ended up happening. That you also find out that there's a bigger evil lurking, and that you actually were destined to defeat Istark, but not this new evil, because they're like, stuff has been changed now that Istark is dead, but now there's even crazier enemy and they pretty much tell you it's Sorrow because of what happened, and they eventually learn the secret of evolution and stuff like that. So he's actually ascended even stronger than than even Istark. So they're like, you were destined to be Istark, but after that it got really hazy. Like that was supposed to be it. But and then you also learn this one other tidbit is that you actually meet. This really isn't told, but it's sort of implied that what ended up happening was there's a lady who's in one of the rooms of the Zenithian castle, and she pretty much is like crying, and she's like crying a lot, and she's sad. She's very sad, and you find out that she actually went to Earth, and she met a woodsman, and they fell in love, and they had a child. And then the Zenithian people found out about it, and they took her back up to Zenithia. So she's kind of crying, and she kind of, when she meets the hero, she kind of remarks on how you kind of look like her, and that your father or whatnot. So in a way, they kind of mention that that's your mother, and right. the woodsman that you meet is that first woodsman that you met back after your village got destroyed. He must have thought that like she died, and that's why he put the thing there. Right.
Now, you're also forgetting something that I feel that's super important during this time, during your playthrough. Your name gets shortened. All of a sudden, people start calling you Kens.
Yeah.
In the game. Do we know why that's the case?
That might have been some sort of error or something like that at one point, because when you go and talk to Master Dragon, like he'll tell you that you need to go below the earth, and that you have to stop the ultimate evil, and that's when he gives you a boost of experience, I believe, and he also makes the Zenithian sword stronger. He makes it pretty much back to what it was, and at that point, if you have like the fire call equipped, I think that screwed it up. Or something like that. If you have the fire claw equipped to Elena.
Right. Okay, so you think it's something to do with the system and how the game was written, like if there's a certain... Because you clearly put Kenshin as your name, but then all of a sudden people start calling you Kens.
Yes. So I think it might have been with that, where like that part kind of got... Something happened in the coding or whatever that screwed that up.
Interesting. All right.
Yeah.
All right, so we talked to the dragon, we're going where again?
Pretty much what he said is that the power from evil has come up, and you have to go that blasted like a hole in the clouds that will lead you directly to this like layer where you can go to the final area. It's called I believe the final area is called Last Refuge.
Right. Yes.
So
because I think doesn't a flame turn into a Zenithian?
Mm-hmm.
Further confusing me about the aspect of flames in this series.
Right. So you pretty much talk to the Master Dragon. He gives you power. He restores the Zenithian sword, and he says that you're the only one who can defeat him. And so you find out. You pretty much go through this hole. Oh! Right. Before we even leave, we bring Lucia back, and she actually gives you one of her dragon. Like apparently they breed dragons up here, and she gives you one of the dragons, and his name is Doran,
who I barely ever used.
Or Doran, and he's he's not bad. Out of all the like extra characters besides Orin and Healy, those are my two favorite. He's probably third because he actually uses he's fairly strong physically attack wise, but he also uses breath attacks that are very good. So he's not actually a bad character to use, and he'll pretty much be with you for the remainder of the game.
Right.
Anyways, so you find out about your mom. You find out about the evil battle that everyone's having.
Yeah,
so
a lot happened on this visit.
Oh yeah, and the music's really good too. I can't stress enough how good the music is.
Mm-hmm.
So we head down into this hole, and we fall all the way down to this cave, which is called the Final Cave, apparently. And this is probably the longest dungeon in the game, where where there's a lot of really good gear that you can collect, and pretty much by the time you get all the way down, you get to like this weird tower, and then you can continue down this weird tower until you get to this final area called the Last Refuge. And in one of the little shrines that's next to there, you talk to a ghost or whatever. It's a Zenithian thing, and I believe it's a she will heal you and pretty much save your game, so you can hang out over there. And she pretty much says that you have to defeat Sorrow, which you already know, but there's 4 barriers surrounding his palace, so you have to get rid of them.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really matter which order you go, but I like to go sort of clockwise, so I start on the bottom left. You kill an enemy. They kind of tell you a little more story, like they kind of like, oh, Sorrow's going to rule the world, so you kill one of the enemies. Then you go up to the next one, which would be like the top left, and he talk about like, Sorrow, the only reason why he's doing it is because Rose is dead, which again is another little thing that you want to keep in mind for bonus content.
Right.
And finally, after defeating even the other 2, the last one on the bottom right hand, his name is Radam Weiss or something like that. And he pretty much says that he was the guy who ordered some humans to kill Rosa. So you're like, oh shit, wow. So he pretty much is like, I wanted him to become evil and bad. I wanted Sorrow to finally take that jump into like full evil mode. So we killed this girl, and boom, that's why he's evil. Right. So after you defeat all 4 of the guards, it pretty much ends the barrier that's over there, and we can go into Necrosauro's palace. But before we go into Necrosauro's palace, let's talk about the immigrant town. Right?
Now
you want to do it?
Yeah. So we had mentioned, I believe it was I'm almost sure it was the last episode about on the remake. There's an immigrant town aspect where Hector in the NES version, Hoffman in the 3DS version or DS version, whichever one. He gets in charge of this immigrant town, and I kind of want to spend, I don't know, maybe a few minutes, 5 to 10, talking about the immigrant town and like what is the benefit and story that happens within the building of this immigrant town.
So pretty much after a little bit, I think after you collect all 8 party members, you go to Hank Hoffman, and he mentions how he wants to start his own, inn or whatever. And that he found out that the Oasis from Chapter 2, where they had the
Bazaar.
What is it? The Oasis for Elena's thing.
Yeah,
is a
Bazaar.
great place to start. Yeah, it's a great place to start a town. So what you need to do when you go there,
Tie that for a second. Tie that. So he's thinking because there's the water's there, but I don't think there were any other towns that were by this oasis for trade or anything like that. I don't know if I agree with him that this was the best place to start his town.
Yeah, I don't know if it was either. I mean, at that point, it was just some desert area with a waterbed, or like an oasis, pretty much.
I think he's too caught up in the water. I think he's too caught up in the water aspect. And
yeah,
so
like at that point, it's hard. There aren't too many towns around there, and close enough to be like, okay, this is where we're starting. Then this is where it's going to happen.
All right, so go ahead, continue, because I don't know too much about this, to be honest with you.
So you talk to Hoffman, and he talks about how you need to start recruiting some people for the town. So if you go, so how it works is there's a little house next to the town, and the little house is where Hoffman is, and then you can go in the actual town. When you go in the actual town, you meet this frog, and the frog can speak, human tongue or whatever, and you're like, holy crap, what the hell? So he's pretty much saying that, he'd like you to rebuild the town too, because, there used to be this thriving town a thriving castle that used to be here. So throughout the entire game, as you're going through, you can actually talk to people in different towns that might not want to be in where they're at, and they want to go live somewhere else. So I don't remember how many people, but there's at least 10. There's at least 10 different characters that you can recruit to join the town. And as the town gets bigger and bigger, you can find mini medals, you can buy armor and weapons and all this good stuff there, until the town actually becomes a castle. And there's a lot of people there talking about how there used to be this prince that lived there, and there was a curse put on his castle, but the only way he could save his people is if he was turned into a frog or something like that. So you're like, oh, okay, so maybe that frog is the prince. So when you talk to him, I forget what happens, but eventually he turns back into a prince and becomes the prince of this new town. Everybody wants him to be the ruler of the town. So pretty much Hank Hoffman gets kicked out. I mean,
I was just going to ask, where did he go?
Not kicked out, but he's kind of like, he's like, oh, I guess my work here is done or something like that.
Okay, is that how he wants to think that he's fully responsible for all this? Okay.
Yeah. So it's a pretty interesting town because you can pick up a lot of mini medals, you can meet a lot of interesting people, and you can buy a lot of really good gear. And I'm trying to think of what other. It's kind of based off of the Dragon Quest VII Immigrant Town, but it has one specific direction it's going to be built in. Like in Dragon Quest VII, you can actually build it in the different areas depending on the people that you recruit. But for this game, you pretty much recruit all of the similar. Like there's an artist, there's a weapon guy, there's a dancer, there's all kinds of really cool stuff. And I want to say there might even be a casino in this town, if I recall correctly. And you can pick up a lot of really interesting stuff there. And actually, for some of the bonus stuff, it will actually play into the town too.
Really? Okay. Well, we'll get to that then after our main boss battle. But I'll tell you what, folks. If you love the Immigrant Town, both I guess in 7 and in this and anywhere else that because I think it's been in other games as well, other than those two.
Yeah.
Trust me, the Dragon Quest creators have heard you, because there's a spin-off just based on building a town called Dragon Quest Builders coming out. I don't know when, but it's coming out at some point.
I think it's going to be coming out near Christmas, I want to say. It's pretty much like Minecraft meets Dragon War.
Real quick, just want to say this. I do think that the idea behind it, the story at least, is genius. That it's basically after Dragon Warrior 1, it's like if you said yes, that you'll team up with the Demon Lord, and then that's why there's a need to build a new town. I think that is amazing that they went that far back for this storyline.
Yeah, I think it's pretty cool too. It's kind of like alternate dimension kind of thing. Like the hero says, you know what, I'll join up with the Dragon Lord, and then they pretty much destroy everything, and you have to pretty much rebuild everything back up. It seems pretty cool. Definitely.
All right, so we'll come back to the Immigrant Town. Let's get to Necrosaro.
Okay, so with Necrosaro or Sorrow, his castle. It's kind of interesting. You fight some nasty monsters, obviously, since this is the final dungeon of the game. But you do find the greatest item in in most Dragon Quest games, called the Sage's Stone, which, if you use it, it'll cast multi-heal on everybody, and it's pretty much free. You can use it constantly. It's really cool. So you get to the end, you go out the other side of his castle, and there's like this windy like cliff thing. And at this point, you do not have your wagon, so you have to use the Baron Horn, so you can get all your party members back, and you'll have a full thing. Now, I think, honestly, you could probably do it without calling the wagon, but it wouldn't be as fun.
Right.
So you get over here to the final battle, and Necrosaro is kind of like he's kind of almost waking up from a weird dream where he's like, "Oh, who am I? What's going on here?" And he pretty much looks like Eastark.
Yeah.
So he's like, "Oh, what's going on? Who am I?" And this, that, and the other. And he's like, then he kind of remembers Rosa, and he's like, "I'm going to destroy everything." So then you fight him. And
wait. So who do you bring? Who are your 4 people? Christo for sure.
For sure, the hero, Ragnar and Elena. But I do swap out like Ragnar for Bray or Christo whenever he's done healing. I'll swap him out.
So you really do bring Christo in for this?
Yes, I do, because
Why?
He does.
Beat's not going to work.
No, I know that, but I use him for when like my characters are like their HP's kind of low.
Okay.
I usually use him.
All right.
And sometimes I give him the Sage's Stone, and if you pick I forget what one it is. I think it might be like try something or try some or whatever the hell. Try it out. I think it was called, and he'll actually use the Sage's Stone, which is kind of cool.
All right.
If you give it to him, but usually I do give it to the hero just because it's like, I don't want him
more
doing
controllable.
stuff. Yes, but so you fight him, and this is a really cool battle because he actually quote unquote evolves throughout the battle. Like you're fighting him, and he looks like a green version of Eastar.
Mm-hmm.
And he eventually loses his arms, and then he loses his leg. Well, he loses his arms, then he loses his head. Then his gut turns into a face. Then he gets these big, big arms. Then he loses his legs, and his legs turn into these massive things. And then finally he gains like a second head. And this is supposedly the secret of the pinnacle of evolution is like 2 heads, crazy arms, giant legs with spikes coming out of them. This is apparently the evolutionary pinnacle ever. And it's like, I always found it kind of weird because it's like, what the hell?
Right, no, definitely. I agree with you there.
Yeah. So he, eventually, he does, what was this? There was something nasty about him. He usually uses like these breath attacks, and his face can like make you, like blind you or whatever. It's really crazy. And eventually you do defeat him, and he kind of is like, he dies, and the cliff is come crashing down, and you're like, we're not moving for some reason. We're not even bothering moving.
We've already given up.
You would figure you'd be running away from this. And then eventually Master Dragon comes down, and he swoops you up, and he saves you.
Yeah, I don't know where the hell he was during the battle.
Yeah, it's very weird. Why you figured he would probably help, but I guess he just wanted to see how we would do, and I guess he kind of knew we would probably win. So we're up there. He pretty much congratulates everybody, and in typical Dragon Quest fashion, you can walk around Zenithia and talk to people, and you talk to. You talk to your mom, and she's pretty much really happy for you. She's crying, and she's like, you could stay up here with me, but, you're your own person. You can do what you want. So you talk to, you leave on the balloon, and pretty much the ending goes by. And as the ending goes by, the hero drops off everybody, I think in order of, I don't remember what the order is. I know he drops off, Ragnar, and Ragnar goes back, and he brings him with him, and he shows him to the king. He's like, hey, this is my buddy, the hero. And then he brings Tulun home, and Talon's, hugging his kid and throwing his kid up in the air, and then he brings Elena, Christo, and Bray back, and magically, I don't know how, but everybody in the castle's back. I honestly don't know where they went, and I honestly don't know how they got back.
I guess it doesn't get answered in the bonus chapter either.
I don't think it does.
Okay.
I don't think it does. So
but
then
they do build the wall back up.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do build the wall back up. Yeah, because they're fixing the wall up there. But now Elena can leave whenever she wants. So I guess they can. It
you don't have to worry
that bad.
about the wall is going to get kicked out in again.
Mm-hmm. And I like the fact that the ending, Nara and Mara get like a little extra. Mm-hmm. They pretty much land back in their hometown, and then they all pay their respects to the Elena's. Or not Elena, Nara and Mara's pop, and then they fly over to Mumbarbara, where I think it's Mara, right? She's the dancer, right?
I think so.
Mara,
yeah.
And she's dancing up on stage, and then the hero kind of like lonely, quietly walks away, and he flies back home, and he goes there, and he's kind of sad because it's like, oh man, no one's there.
Yeah, everyone else had something to go back home to except me.
Yeah, I always found this moment kind of sad, and then all of a sudden, magically, Cecile returns.
How?
I don't know. I honestly don't know. Like in the DS and the other versions, there's like this light, and it comes down, and then all of a sudden she's there, flowers all over the place, and then they hug, then everybody from the group comes walking up, and they kind of like meet, and then that's how the game kind of ends.
I don't know. Maybe they're going for the power of friendship brought her back.
Maybe. Know. Maybe Master Dragon brought her back. I have no idea.
That would be a good explanation. You saved the world, and, I know that you don't want to live life by yourself, so there you go.
Yeah, and one other thing to mention if you're playing the remake versions, that you actually fly by Rosaville, and there's the monsters dug a grave up for Rosa, so that's kind of important for the bonus content.
Okay. Well,
so pretty much that's it. That's Dragon Quest IV, but there is a 6th chapter, sort of.
Now, do you have to do anything
in
unlock?
The remakes? If we're going to talk about it.
Yeah, we're going to get right into it. But is there anything you have to do to unlock it, or does it just come naturally? Because I don't. I think I played it, but I don't remember too much about this bonus chapter.
Yeah. So all you have to do, I believe, is watch the game until the end, and then they'll ask you if you want to save your game, and then tell you it's kind of like, oh, okay, there's more stuff to do even after you beat it. So I honestly feel like they wanted to do a Chapter 6 in the NES version, but maybe they didn't have enough space to add extra stuff. You know what I mean? But at least they were able to do it in the remake versions.
All right, so how does Chapter 6 start off?
So Chapter 6 pretty much starts off, you're in the final refuge, and you pretty much, right before you go to fight Sorrow, you have all the items you have, all that stuff. So if you leave, you can now warp out of there using the zoom spell, and you warp back to, what's the name of the town? Let me look it up let me just get it really quick. Pretty much the very last town in the game.
Godside?
Yeah, Godside, right. Okay. And you go over there, and you notice there's this giant hole there. And you're like, okay, what the hell is that? You can go down the hole, but before you do, you want to head over to Rosaville. And in Rosaville, you see that the monsters are doing doing a grave for Rosa, and you and you go over there. I believe if you search, you get something. The ending, the directions are a little hazy, but I know what happens.
Sure.
So you get that, and you go through this. I think you get the item, whatever the heck you get from Rosaville, and then you head back to Godside, and you go down this big. There's this big hole where it's like a shrine in the village, and there's this big hole in the shrine. So you go down there, and it's pretty much a bonus dungeon where you go all around and you get all these different items and whatnots, and you finally reach the end of the bonus dungeon, and there's these two guys named Kung Pao and Fu Young or something like that.
Right.
They're pretty ridiculous looking characters. One of them looks sort of like a guy wearing like a chicken like chicken arms
There's
and
a lot of
chicken
egg
soup.
puns, if I recall, too.
Yeah, a lot of eggs, and then one guy kind of looks like an egg, and he's like a bandit or whatever. Anyways, you have to beat you pretty much fight them, and once you defeat them, they'll let you have a wish. But the first wish is always the same. They pretty much that you can bring back Rosa, and so you bring back Rosa, and she joins your group, and you go and talk to Sorrow. Pretty much go through the whole thing again, and instead of fighting him, he'll actually revert back to his self after meeting Rosa, and he'll actually join your party, which is really cool. Now, at this point, he's actually probably the most powerful character in the game, and he gets some really awesome gear. You can go back in the GOT side, and you can get all the gear, and there's like this picture when you're fighting the 2 bonus bosses. There's this picture of like this warrior, and as you ask for different wishes, you get all of his equipment, which can only be equipped by Sorrow, until you reach like it's this naked old guy. His name is Sorrow. His name is also Sorrow, and he actually goes into the immigrant town if you beat them. If you beat them, I think it's like 7 times. You get a helmet, you get a shield, you get an armor, you get a sword.
How long would it take someone, do you think, to do all of this? To be the same people 7 times?
Probably a couple. Well, it'll take a little while to level up your characters, and then probably a couple of times, like maybe like 2 or 3 hours, because you'd have to go through the whole thing all over again. And yeah, it's not too hard because they don't really get tougher.
Oh, okay.
You just have to beat them faster. Otherwise, you don't get the reward. It's like you have to beat them within, like the first time is like 30 rounds, then you have like 25, and so on and so forth. So you got to get more efficient in the way that you beat them. But so after you get all the gear, there's this weird old man who was in the painting. He goes to the immigrant town. And that's pretty much it for the immigrant town. I mean, there's this one extra dude. And then, so, what ends up happening is you got Rosa, you got Sorrow, and so, if you remember, there was that one guy, his name was Weiss. He's like, oh, I had them kill Rosa, so what you have to do is go back to the Palace of the Monsters, where everybody's having another meeting, where pretty much the Weiss is the new leader of the monsters. Apparently, you didn't really kill him when you killed him back in the final area,
right?
And he basically turns into Eastark, and then he turns into pretty much what Necrosaro turned into, due to the fact that he's like, I found the highest form of evolution. I'm gonna be the most evil guy. So you pretty much fight him, and Sorrow's like, you're not gonna win. And, you fight him and he's a little more difficult than Sorrow was as a bad guy, because I think he has a lot more HP. I mean, it only matters, it makes sense because he's the bonus boss.
Right, sure.
So once you defeat him, pretty much you go through the ending just like before. Sorrow doesn't show up in the Zenithian castle as the, because once you defeat him, it's not like the castle blows up or anything. You just automatically return to the Zenithian castle. And pretty much Sorrow isn't there. He's like, oh, I don't want to be there. So you go back, you see all that stuff, and you fly by, You fly by Rosaville, and Sorrow and Rosa are together rather than like having the grave. So that's pretty much the ending. So the bonus content is pretty much you get Sorrow in the group, and he's really, really good character, and you get like a secret ending,
right,
that you get.
Kind of more than a secret ending, it's probably more of an alternate ending,
right? Because
you're not beating Sorrow, you've essentially gotten away from that fight and are now fighting the other guy. So
yes.
It's probably more of an alternate ending than a secret ending.
Yeah, well, it's kind of cool. Sorrow's not like. He's not totally a bad guy. It's just, his lady got killed and he's pissed off at the whole world about it, and kind of like that. Like, you definitely get more of a sympathetic feel for him, and I feel like he's also another character who definitely they like put more time into developing than the other Dragon Quest games so far. Like if you think about Zoma, he's just a really evil dude.
Yeah.
Hargon, he's just like an evil priest guy, and then the Dragon Lord, he's just again evil, evil, evil. But at least with this guy, at least you kind of understand why he'd be so mad and all that.
Do you think that that's why they actually did a Chapter 6, because they were like, you know what, we probably want to use this guy again, maybe for something, so let's make it where he's not dead at the end so that we can possibly bring him back for other things?
Yeah, I honestly think that I kind of feel that way too, but I just feel like he's more of a sympathetic bad guy, and that's why they're like, I feel like after they gave you that clue after Radam Weiss said like, oh, I had her killed and everything, people were probably like, oh, you know what, I don't think he's that bad of a dude, like, even though you have to destroy him, and it's like, I wonder if there'd be another way to do it. And honestly, I personally think, now this is just my opinion,
Sure.
but I honestly think that they would have tried to do something in the NES version if they could have, but maybe they didn't have enough space.
Right. No, I see what you're saying.
But they do use him in other games like Dragon Quest Heroes and all these other games. You hear about Sorrow and stuff, and you even get to play as him in Dragon Quest Heroes, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so this was it. This is the end of Dragon Warrior 4 Life, the miniseries. Overall thoughts on the game, I guess. I mean, I think we both liked it, obviously, otherwise we wouldn't have done this miniseries.
Yeah. I just think, like, at this point, it's honestly the best NES role-playing game. It's definitely the best NES Dragon Quest game. I mean, it's got great characters. They're not just, people. They're not just, like, characters you create and then they use them through battles or whatever. They each have their own thing. The music's great. The colors are really good. Like, I feel like this game was more vibrant with their colors than even the other three games.
Yeah, definitely.
The story's really good, and the way that they broke everything up was really good. Like, they broke it up into chapters, and this was actually a really great way to do it. And then the music's great. Everything's really good. They took everything. They pretty much just kept building on what they're doing right, and even from Dragon Warrior 3. The only bad thing I would have to say about this game is for the NES version, not for any of the other versions. It's just the AI in the 5th chapter. It's like oh man, I should be able to control these guys, but whatever. It all works out. So yeah, no,
I see what you're saying in regards to that, and I love the game. All jokes aside, that I might have done during the series. I agree with almost everything you said. Great story, great music, just all around great. Now, there is a plan to do Dragon Warrior 5/Dragon Quest 5. I'm not sure when that's going to happen exactly at this point, but I do want to let people know that it is going to happen. It's probably going to be split into 3 parts. It's a little bit weirder for me compared to this game, Dragon Warrior 4, because Dragon Warrior 4, I remember the first time I played it, the first time, different reactions I had.
Mm-hmm.
Dragon Quest 5 is when I believe they started only releasing certain things in Japan.
Yep.
So I actually, for example, I played Dragon Quest 7 before I actually played 5. Do you understand what I'm saying? Because it was available here in the States. So I don't really know when my, I remember I felt like this because I was at this point in my life. I don't have that for 5 because I don't remember. I just remember do you remember when it was released for something I would have played?
You mean for the 3DS?
In the United States, yeah. I guess it was the 3DS. I don't even remember.
I think it was released for the 3DS back in 2000. I want to say late 2000s, 2008 maybe.
Okay, so, yeah, and I know definitely the 7 was out before that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think way before that, to be honest with you. But so it's going to be a little weird, but I do still like Dragon Quest V, and it'll be a lot of fun talking about it. As far as 4 goes, like he said, it's just like, I love the fact that even each chapter had certain things about the town. Like there would be certain things where the town still mattered. It's not like chapter 1 happened and no, you'll never see these towns again. Like the only one except for Tulun. Tulun, you could argue you didn't never really have to go back to anything that was part of his story specifically.
Not really.
But like, chapter 1, Izmit becomes important because of the dream. Chapter 2, Sand Team is pretty important, you know, because you have to fight our buddy Balzac.
Yeah.
Chapter 4, obviously you have to. Helion is a big part of, and Actempo is a big part of chapter 5, like storyline importance. So I don't know, just like everything wrapped up. That's why I continue to still love this game.
Yeah, right. It's just a really memorable and really great game. And honestly, if I had to like tell people, like, this would be the game where I'd be like, if you want to play Dragon Quest and you want to start off with something, this would probably be the game because it's fun and it's not too hard. Like, you really don't have to level up too much in this game. If you just kind of keep on a certain pace. You never have to level up too much, and it never gets like super difficult where it's like I gotta level up. And I just feel like it's just a really, really like enjoyable story, and the pacing is just really good.
Yep. All right. Why don't we get some final plugs from you on where people can find you, and then we're heading out.
All right. So you can find me on Twitter, Facebook, and mainly YouTube. If you just go and you go to Kenshin1913, Kenshin1913, and you can find me again, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube.
All right, everyone. Thank you for listening, and everyone have a great rest of Halloween. Be safe and have a good one. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen to the Jim Boy Star podcast. Please visit the website www.thatspodcasting.com, where you can get the latest news on all of the latest upcoming episodes of this show. And you could download the archives of previous episodes, and don't forget to subscribe on iTunes and Stitcher for the latest episodes coming right to you right when they're released. You can also follow me at www.twitter.com/JimBoyStar. This is my story, and thank you for being a part of it.